To start off this morning, will you please welcome Stuart, the Chief Executive of our Garment Division. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Good morning, everybody. Did you get that, Derek? I'll start again. Good morning. Before we enter into the project presentation itself, I'd just like to take a minute to clarify the role of the Garment Division and what its aims must be. Our role is to provide our shops worldwide with product, either manufactured in our own factories or where that's not possible, i.e. where we come across items such as shoes, sweaters, etc., to source those goods from outside manufacturers. Throughout the process, we're trying constantly to achieve a balance of quality, price, and very importantly, to keep our delivery schedule, because retailers order based on what they believe they'll sell. If we're late, we lose sales.
Good morning, everybody. How the project came about. I'd like to tell you a bit of the background of the Fast Track project and why we're here today. In Caernarvon, we receive orders for garments from our retail divisions in the United Kingdom, North America and Europe, covering some 300 shops altogether. These shops sell some 3.5 million garments a year, most of which are made in our own factories or by our garment suppliers, mainly in this country. It's my job and that of my colleagues to ensure that the orders we receive are processed efficiently and made on time. In the early part of each season, and as you know we have 2 seasons, spring, summer and autumn, winter, we are building up our stocks for the launch of the new season. For example, we start to manufacture in April for the autumn launch in August. Thereafter, for the rest of the season, we are making to replenish stock in the warehouse and in the shops. If a style sells well, it takes some 5 to 6 weeks to put new stock in the warehouse. This is some 1.5 to 2 weeks in the cutting room and 3 to 3.5 weeks in the factory. We may often have a situation, as Stuart's told you, where the shops are running out of stock on best-selling styles, yet they can't have any more garments for another 5 weeks. Imagine the value of the sales that are lost.
It has to be able to process garments as single garments. So the old notion of bundles is going to become very old-fashioned, and every garment that will pass through your factory will in fact be a single. As an example, if you consider when you normally work on a bundle of 10 or 12 or 15 garments, you may finish the first one in that bundle after a short space of time. That one then has to wait while you do the next 10, 12 or 14 garments, so that before the first one can proceed, the 12 or 15 in the bundle have to be complete. Bit silly really if you think about it, because the first one that the shop's waiting for can be on its way through the factory. So we feel this is an essential feature of this system and a need which the system has to be able to meet.
So, as we close for Christmas on Friday the 18th of December, the whole factory, lock, stock and barrel, will be moved to Unit D, the new curtain factory. Long before the move, we will talk about and explain where people will work, how they will get there, plus all the other questions that are bound to arise.
You must be wondering who Eaton is, what Eaton Systems is. Just in brief, I'd like to give you a bit of a background of who we are and what the company is. Eaton is a shirt factory in Sweden called Eaton Shirts, obviously. And it was a family-owned business, and one of the family, a man called Inge Davidson, was and still is a most brilliant inventor and engineer. If you went into his workshop, it is a trip into Fantasyland. At that time, in the mid-60s, 20-some years ago, in the shirt factory, they were having problems of delivery, price, import penetration, etc. And they asked Inge Davidson if he could go out and buy a system or do something to make changes, improve throughput time. Inge, in his own way, couldn't find anything that he found suitable, and he made his own system for their own factory. And that would have normally been the end of the story. The installation went in, it was very successful. But like all good ideas or new inventions, word got round and suddenly found that it was making systems and not shirts. So he left the shirt company, formed Eaton Machinery 20 years ago. And that, as I say in Hollywood, the rest is history. What's happening, we're finding what's happening in the world, especially now, is that there is a great need, as the previous speakers mentioned, for quick response. Retailers, customers demand choice, flexibility instantly, and the manufacturer has to support this. What we'll do now is actually get the system running, and it will give you an impression of what will happen at the workplace. Okay. All the work is high up in the building, in clamps. If I'm sending work, I'm machining, I'm sending work to Jan here, it will come in to his workstation, lock into the chain, and come to him automatically. It's magic, isn't it, eh? You will see on the clamp, just hold it in. You'll see on the clamp a barcode. If you remember the film, it says we'll watch clamp number 3014. This is clamp 1113. Every clamp has its own unique barcode. As it goes through a workstation, press the button. You'll see at the top there, that pendulum action. That is a little barcode reader reading the clamp, informing the computer what's happening at that workstation. Every workstation has a terminal here, and that gives you the information that Brian was talking about on performance, output, sending information to and from your supervisor, etc.
Can everybody hear me at the back? Yes? Okay. Can I say good afternoon to you all, ladies and gentlemen. We are pleased to see you here. Mr. Peter Sheridan, over here. Peter was, until very recently, production director of Laura Ashley Apparel, was instrumental in instigating the project. He's now gone over to the commercial side and is the division's commercial director. That's for LA Garments. I see we have with us this afternoon Mr. Chris Owen, who's in the centre there. Good afternoon, Chris. Chris is our administration director and tries to help us make sure that the admin side runs as well as possible. And last but by no means least, Mr. Gordon Parker, who I'm sure some of you will know, if not all of you, who is Managing Director of Eaton UK, the company, in fact, who installed the system that you will see later this afternoon. In a few moments' time we'll be showing you a video which basically in about 8 minutes tracks the project in its various stages from start to where we are now. We and anybody else from the companies will do our best to answer any questions that you may have, and would be pleased if you'd come and enjoy a drink and a buffet with us. So, without any further ado, firstly, if I could ask Derek to organise the video, please.
Laura Ashley Industries prides itself on its commitment to new technology as a means of improving production. Industries is the manufacturing and distribution arm of this international fashion and home furnishings company. To meet the demands of the marketplace, the company needed to set up a quick response or fast tracking method of making garments, which could be combined with the existing efficient printing of fabric and the distribution of products to the shops. This idea of fast tracking was introduced to the 120 employees of the company's Newtown garment production unit in September 1987. The presentation was made by a Laura Ashley project team and representatives of the Swedish garment handling systems company Eaton. The staff learned of the 6 months of research by Laura Ashley into systems made by several different manufacturers. They were told that Eaton had been chosen because after point-by-point evaluation, it was the only company geared to creating a piece of sophisticated engineering tailor-made to the unique needs of Laura Ashley. The Newtown factory had been selected for the project because of a highly skilled workforce who were used to producing any type of garment in any fabric. They were also flexible to changes, and their quality of work was high. The factory itself was the right size, only a relatively small amount of building work needed to be done. The building work began at Christmas 1987. The staff were relocated temporarily to another company site in Newtown. A new warehouse was built and additional offices were created inside the plant. In total, £670,000 was to be invested in the project. The equipment being installed was Eaton's 2002 high-level computerized garment handling system. The Eaton company had been set up in the late 60s, about the time that Laura and Bernard Ashley were starting to build a name for themselves at their headquarters in Caernarvon, mid-Wales. Over in Sweden, garment engineer Inga Davidsson was developing the world's first automated garment handling system. The Eaton 2002 system is totally modular and can be assembled with just 2 tools. There's no oil or grease, so hands and garments do not get soiled. A high-level rail enables garments to be stored in the roof space and moved to the operator's workstations. This has the additional benefit of improving working conditions. No more heavy bundles to be lifted. No more untidy skips full of partly finished garments. What was once an empty shell began to fill with mechanical and computerized wizardry as the Laura Ashley's fast-track project began to take shape. The girls were brought back into the factory section by section from March 1988 onwards. The switch to the new system meant moving from a make-through environment to semi-sectionalized. they'd received thorough training off-site and on. The Unit 10 system is driven by an Opt 1130 software package. Supervisors are able to allocate work using one of 3 computer terminals on the factory floor. They're able to see at a touch of a button a range of valuable production data such as work in progress, individual operators' performance and so on. At the start of the manufacturing process, garment pieces are loaded into clamps and sent around the factory according to the individual's ability and speed. The operator brings the clamp down from the roof space to her workstation when she's ready for the next garment. Each clamp has its own identity number, so enabling rush jobs to go through the system without interfering with normal production. Throughout the entire project, the workforce have had the opportunity to voice their opinions. Many of their ideas have been incorporated. Eaton staff were on site during the installation and for several months afterwards to help iron out the inevitable teething problems of such a pioneering system. When Fast Track is fully operational, it'll cut the average garment throughput time from several days to just 10 to 12 hours. The first garment emerged from the production line on May the 6th, 1988. The event was marked by a champagne celebration among Laura Ashley and Eaton staff, with, of course, a toast to the future success of Fast Track.
Which I think in a way it's true, but in fact it's not true. Because when you want to do something else, like better throughput, it pays all the way. Maybe you have to close the factory.
So I think, well,
close it.
I think as far as growing the factory, I don't know how many, if any of you are parked around the back of the building, but this machine floor is actually 6,000 square feet. At the back of the building there is room for another 6,000 square feet. If the system were felt to be a good investment and we wanted to go that way, the opportunity exists. Having said that, from the point of view of return on investment of the system, which obviously is a key thing, the system was not bought primarily for productivity, although obviously that's something that we're working very hard on. The system was bought predominantly as our answer to quick response to changes in market needs.
This is a statement by Philip Mesker made in 1989 because, I wish to place on record how badly I was treated by Laura Ashley plc and particularly Peter Sheridan, the then production director. I was employed by Laura Ashley as a senior manager garments south from 1984. I continued this position until the autumn of 87 when Peter said I should consider obtaining a bank loan for the purpose of buying out the factories from the company. My immediate reaction was to tell him I wasn't interested. I also had an ongoing disagreement with him on the question of the iniquitous system of piecework payment to the make-through machines between Locksys 1 and Locksys 2. Despite numerous meetings at the highest level, this matter is still unresolved. After I indicated I was not interested in his factory proposition, within weeks he began to undermine my position. On the 9th of October 87, I was relieved of my responsibility for the make-through factories on the pretext that I was to concentrate on the Unit 10 Fast Track project. On this project, I had or had absolutely no control or input over what's being done, apart from the very local day-to-day supervision. It was very obvious to me the whole project was a potential disaster, and I would be prepared to elaborate on this if necessary. On the 17th of November 87, I had a further meeting with Peter Shen, when his general tone was that I was no good. When he reacted, he changed, agreed it was not that bad, and it was agreed we should have further meetings. After numerous cancellations, we had a meeting on the 30th of November 87. At this meeting, he told me he had lost confidence in me and that Unit 10 would be given to General Keaty at Christmas. He also stated, although I was no good, the project was far too important for me to leave. He further told me my days as senior manager were over, and come March and April he'd be buying my job out. But I still have a job with Laura Ashley.
Several people have said that they felt the fast track system was brought in for large volumes of the same style. So would you agree with that?
Yes, that was its purpose, and also I feel that there were backhanders involved. And I obviously can't prove that. But when you think what we were putting through, different styles, it wasn't easy. The job to divide that particular garment down into the pieces of work for every machinist was quite a job, and whoever did it had to know what they were doing. And without that, the whole system wouldn't work. You just had an overhead hanging system that, it wasn't doing any job. But the thing is, I believe it cost over £1 million, and I'm quite concerned that it wasn't straightforward.
Well, some of the Welsh managers felt that they were really suspicious, because when they got to hear about the management buyout, they started thinking, now, was this fast track system really brought in for Laura Ashley's benefit, or was it brought in for the management buyout benefit?
I think second, yeah. It certainly wasn't for Laura Ashley's benefit. Yeah.
Within 12 months, it was clear that it wasn't working properly, because company records show that it was running approximately 85% inefficient.
Yeah.
What would you like to say about that?
I quite believe it, because it's only as good as the management that are running it. And if they didn't know what they're doing or weren't bothered, it wouldn't work.
And then we understand when the factory is closed, it was moved up to Caernarvon. Can you remember anything about that?
Yes, but I don't think it ever did much at Caernarvon from my memory. I think that was after I left, wasn't it? Yeah.
Well,
they'd had to justify its purchase. That's really what happened. Yeah.
And then it went up to Caernarvon, and I understand the computers weren't connected properly.
No.
Ended up in a container outside behind the factory.
Yep.
Then it was stripped down, and the whole lot of it ended up in these containers. And I've been told that when they went to try and sell them, they had a look at them, and because they'd been out in the damp, they had rusted.
Yeah.
So basically, it was just now a heap of scrap.
A scrap. You're quite right. Yeah. That's what happened. When I did have the meeting with Stuart Forbes, it was obvious that he was doing it with Sheridan's complete backing. I knew that these people, these two, but possibly even John James, but I'm not so sure about him, he was the managing director, that they had in mind they were going to buy this company out. And I knew that the family would not have that. Work was going out to out companies for outmake, to the extent they were keeping the factories short of work. They didn't want them to run efficiently. And so the amount of waiting time, but it was quite considerable waiting time in the factories when work was being sent to outdoor people.
The company were paying my staff and paying outside contractors for having the work made up that my staff could have produced quite easily. At the time, I didn't think there was anything particularly dubious. Although the more discussions went on and as time went on, it became, how can I say, more difficult to rationalise what was happening. And the thought of, you know, the company's own units having to struggle for work and then finding out that work had gone to outside contractors, it didn't make a lot of sense.
Totally destroyed of any confidence. Coupled with this dreadful situation, in May 1989, the work from the cutting room, due, I was told, to the computerised cutting and its teething problems, arrived late, and this situation went on until September. Numerous phone calls to the cutting room, memos to my superiors regarding the situation and the cost to the unit, a cost we had to answer for due to the incompetence of others. Targets which could not be met because we had no cut work, but were still expected to do so. My concern over the labour turnover was increasing, as indeed the figures were alarming.
During the period 85-ish to the present day, labour turnover has fluctuated, but probably averages over 50% at the moment. And at one time it had reached the 60s, and in certain factories had climbed to almost 100% in certain areas. There was a period where, you know, people will look back and say the company lost its skilled labour force.
It was tense. Everybody was unhappy. Everybody was down everybody's throat. You just couldn't breathe. You know, you couldn't go to the toilet. You couldn't go for a cigarette. You just couldn't do anything. You were just stuck on your machine. Couldn't talk. Couldn't look backwards. Anything. It was stress. Everybody was ill. I had an illness, a long illness, and I didn't care. I came back to work, back same normal. We were just a number.
Their name's Muck in Newtown. They're disastrous. People won't come and work for this firm now. I won't come back. I definitely won't come back after this. But I'm going to see my solicitor and that's it. I've had enough of them. Can't treat you like this.
Marion Rowlands, the worldwide production director, says Laura Ashley's death did cause changes, but the success continued. When he retired in 1990, there were 13 Ashley factories in Wales and the Borders, employing nearly 3,000 people. Marion Rowlands believes Laura Ashley has a viable future in Wales, but instead of contracting out 3/4 of garment production as now, the answer lies in a return to complete in-house production, with its flexibility and quality control.
Well, the biggest success in the past was we could respond to the market needs. For example, you would get a cutting schedule, i.e. from the retail worldwide on Monday, then the same week we would be delivering to our shops customer needs. And it's so important. What we would do, we would design maybe some 60 or 70 garments within the range, and all of that, you would collect about 20 top sellers. Then you would pay attention to those 20 top sellers, and they would, on a cutting schedule on Monday morning, they'd be in the shops on Wednesday or Thursday the same particular way. That was a great success because you were responding to the market needs.
And of course, at that time, the company made huge losses.
Yes. I did have a I don't know if I bumped into him. I had a meeting with Adam Lofthouse, who didn't say as much, but I indicated he completely disagreed with what they were doing. But although he was the MD, they had the factories under their control, and he wasn't able to do it.
So you think that Adam Lofthouse wasn't aware of the management buyout, and so
If he wasn't altogether. He wasn't one of that particular team. I'm fairly sure about that.
You've heard of Parker pens, haven't you?
Yeah.
Well, they were a sort of world leader at one time, and then they went a bit iffy. They were valued at something like 35 million, right? And a group of the managers got together and bought it out. But do you know how much money they had to put in? 300,000. For a company worth 35 million. To keep it going, right? That's all they had to put in. If Sheridan and his mob are considering a sort of management buyout, well, like, my first thought was that they'd never raise the money. But I mean, if that's all you have to raise against 35 million, like if they could raise something like 1 million between them, then they could take over something worth 100 million, couldn't they? Because it's public now, you see. If they devalue it and keep devaluing it until the shares in it are worth sod all, then the stock market are going to stop it trading on the stock exchange, and then it becomes very easy for a takeover. The sort of public interest demands that somebody takes it over, and it gets to the stage where although BA owns the thing, he's almost bound to sell it. It gets very, very naughty, and it frightened me when I saw how little you'd have to put up to take over a company like that.
Peter's got nothing to do with that side anymore. He's on the mother and child. He's got his own division. That's all Peter's interested in now. His own division. The same as the new guy they brought in. I don't know if you met him, a guy called John Simpson. He's interested in the dress division. They split the company up, and to me that's where they started to go wrong. Why they've done that is anyone's guess. Smaller the division, it's a more saleable commodity, isn't it?
Have you heard any rumours of any proposed manager's buyout or anything like that?
Oh yeah, I've heard that.
You have done?
Oh yeah, I've heard that. Yeah, I've heard that. That'll probably happen eventually.
If it is a management buyout, then those managers. I mean, would you buy something based on that environment?
Yeah, but you're only buying a section, Derek, aren't you?
Yeah, I know, but if you buy it, it's obviously got to succeed after, and you've also got to get customers.
Yeah, but they've got the customers as long as they can provide the service.
I
mean, let's face it, the successful part of the apparel is mother and child, and separate, well, mother and child. Right? Mother and child is run by Peter Sheridan. That's where the rumoured buyout will come from. Peter Sheridan will try a buyout there. John Fennick, who probably try a buyout eventually with Gresford. They're the ones who will make money, if anything. But the likes of anything else that left, what'll happen to them is anyone's guess. Since a consortium came to buy divisions of Ashley's, right? And there's certain areas they wouldn't touch. I mean, I wouldn't entertain the likes of Mack or Lanny, right? I'd let those go, those factories, personally. If I was a consortium buying a cutting room, I'd give that one a go. But if after 12 months it wasn't successful, or it was still on the lines it was being run then they'd go through it like a dose of salts. And a lot of people from the top would go dental services, and if it still wasn't successful, I'd move. Because you can get basically a purpose-built factory from the council in Telford, which is where I suggested moving to originally, and I think they'll move it.
Like splitting it up into different areas obviously makes it a lot cheaper to buy.
Oh, well, I think that's the idea, to be honest with you. I mean, let's face it, where's the money being made in the company? It's only on the retail side, isn't it? The shops. No. I don't think Stuart's got the technical background to give you any support anyway. He just leave it to Edward and say, look, you manage it, you get on with it. If you can't do it, then you find a solution. Basically, it's a Mickey Mouse company. We all feel, with the years' experience we've got, we feel that it's going to go down the Swanee anyway, the way it's going, and there's no future there. We all feel eventually it'll be sold off, sliced up and sold off, and it's not the company to be working for. There's no leadership, if you like. There's no direction. There's no one sort of saying, like, at the helm. There's no one driving. There's no driving force.
Well, just make sure that shareholders' money isn't involved in that these people aren't given a handout to run a business, and after they've run the bloody business into the ground, because that's what often happens, you know. The managers run the business into the ground through their own incompetence, and then they're given a handout from the shareholders' money to run the business and support them in a buyout. So remember that you're a shareholder. Take a lot of interest in this, and find out what the basis for the buyout has been, because it's not Peter Sheridan's got no money. So where's he getting the money from? Now it could be outside manufacturers, want a feet in there, but Peter Sheridan could very often get a consortium of managers together, cheap rate, and then go to the bank and draw a loan on it, knowing that the bank's okay because they've got 100% security. They get, if things fold up, they still get their money.
An industrial tribunal in Shrewsbury has been hearing of dramatic changes in the management structure brought in to combat falling profits at crisis hit Laura Ashley.
One of them was manager Howell Jones, who'd spent 13 years with the company. He claims that after the death of Laura Ashley, the company started getting rid of old and loyal employees, stripping the clothing division of skilled people and undermining the morale of people in the factories.
It's been claimed that Laura Ashley clothing factories in mid-Wales were being deliberately run down by certain senior managers at Caernarvon. The reason it's alleged is that there were secret plans for a management buyout of parts of the company's garment division.
Watered down. the sting was taken out of it to present a far prettier picture than the one that actually existed. And I think possibly had Sir Bernard seen the original at the time, things may have been different.
They had in mind they were going to buy this company out, and I knew that the family would not have that.
But if you make the comparison as you just did, I mean, in the last half year, a year ago, 135 turnover produced 6.5 million profit. Now you've got 175 turnover and only 300,000 profit.
Yes, but our priority in the first half has had to be one of cash generation. Our much publicised refinancing deal, which we put into place earlier this year, clearly showed that we were in a weak financial position. We have made arrangements to overcome that with our deal with our Japanese partners, Eaton, but we have had to work in a very tight market in both the UK and the USA. The UK market in particular has been squeezed with high interest rates that we had to pay on our refinancing deal.
Yes, but your turnover is up. I mean, it's not so much a depressed market.
Yes, our turnover is up. Our margins in the States are down, and also our margins in the UK.
Sir Bernard Ashley told the meeting that most of the company's problems were of their own making, but he said measures had been taken to rectify them. Borrowing had been reduced and every area of business was being scrutinised. His speech was certainly a confident one. He said that we were now seeing society returning to the values and traditions on which Laura Ashley was built. His message was that the company would survive.
I've always said there are two things one must distinguish. That is Laura Ashley the woman and Laura Ashley the legend. The legend is a combination of two people who happen to get on marvellously well together.